for women who are pregnant, and they really don't.
But there have been news accounts based on other investigations, other information, where women are told that if you have an abortion, you're more likely to get breast cancer. Or if you have an abortion, you may never be able to have kids again.
The city attorney's office recently sent compliance notices to 6 pregnancy centers in Los Angeles to inform them of the law's requirements. The city attorney also mentioned he had no evidence that any of them have been violating the law.
So we're going to be following up the dissemination of those notices with investigations to assure the law is, in fact, being fully effectuated by these so-called crisis pregnancy centers.
Centers are required to post information about how to access a range of programs.
They can provide the information by posting it, they can give a document to an individual, or they can show it to her digitally.
Pregnancy centers that fail to follow the law could face a $500 fine for the first offense and $1,000 for each subsequent violation. I'm Rasha Goel for LA This Week.
The city attorney encourages pregnant women to contact his office at 213-978-8340 if they believe they have received inaccurate or incomplete information about their options. While the celebrations for LGBTQ Heritage Month continue, and in Hollywood, a museum exhibit shines the spotlight on the contributions made by the gay and lesbian community in Tinseltown. And Marcos takes us there.
This exhibit truly showed its colors. The reel-to-reel exhibit at the Hollywood Museum marked its 3rd time here, a show that highlights how gays in the LGBT community are portrayed in TV and movies.
I'm an LGBT activist myself. Besides being on Child of the 70s is a LGBT-themed web series, and now it's on Out TV.
The exhibit also featured the work that gays have contributed to the industry, from costume designers to actors to musical artists.
And we hope that you will have a chance to see the Cyndi Lauper exhibit this evening. As many of you know, she is a tireless, long-time activist to gay rights movement.
Many here felt this was also a celebration of all gays after the great strides towards equality made by the LGBT community in recent years.
2 years ago, when we opened this exhibit the first time, we did not have nationwide recognition of equality and the freedom to marry. Now it is the law of the land.
Celebrities also came out, including Tony winner and fashion icon Julie Newmar.
When I found out why they invited me to welcome you to the LGBT exhibit, I was told at one point or another, most of you in this room had dressed up as me. I am touched. You have good taste.
But even with the party atmosphere, community leaders reminded listeners that as the transgender bathroom issue rages, there's still a lot of work to be done in the fight for true equality and acceptance. I'm Anna Marcos for LA This Week.
Well, it sounds like science fiction. A downtown LA company is trying to bring public transit near the speed of sound to the world. Gil Reyes reports on the Hyperloop and how it could influence urban planning in Los Angeles.
It's SpaceX founder Elon Musk's futuristic idea for high-speed transit. Not by rail, not by road, but on tubes. Inside these vacuum tubes would be capsules, shuttling passengers at 760 miles per hour. Welcome to the future. Welcome to Hyperloop.
A lot of people, and rightly so, still think this is a science fiction idea, but actually we're going to have a full-scale, full-speed prototype running by the end of this year.
Hyperloop One co-founder Brogan Bambrogan speaking with other tech innovators at the Milken Global Conference in Beverly Hills. Also on the panel, LA Mayor Eric Garcetti. He says Hyperloop and other futuristic transport systems like self-driving cars could, for starters, reduce LA's soul-sucking traffic.
We love in LA this idea we're going to have freedom, trapped in a car, moving at 3 miles an hour. That's not freedom. And I think the moment that, a new generation shows us differently, the way it isn't just about transportation, it's going to free up the way we do urban planning.
He says fewer cars could free up LA parking lots for development. The city could build more housing, making the cost of housing more affordable. Hyperloop One is headquartered in downtown LA's Arts District and is one of several companies competing for the privilege of launching Hyperloop, the brainchild of SpaceX and Tesla CEO Elon Musk. Much of the hype over Hyperloop centers on passenger transport, shuttling people from LA to San Francisco in 30 minutes. But Bam Brogan also mentions transporting goods to and from the Port of LA in record speed.
Now you can maybe double the efficiency of that same port, also making it easier on the local community without the pollution, being unrestricted of right-of-way, so maybe you have less trucks on the road.
The goal is to have a fully operational Hyperloop by 2020. Gil Reyes for LA This Week.
Rival companies have differing opinions over the best propulsion system for Hyperloop shuttles. One idea is magnetic levitation, another is air pressure. Well, with the LA Rams about to make the LA Coliseum their home for a while, officials are talking trash and the effort to keep the waste from piling up. Thousands of LA Rams fans are set to flock to the LA Coliseum for the highly anticipated football season. And when the game is over, the only thing left will be trash, and tons of it. But instead of hauling the trash to the landfills, officials have come up with a game plan. It's called the Zero Waste Program, an effort that seeks to cut the amount of trash that ends up in those landfills.
It's a way for us to really create a more sustainable environment.
Trash company Athens Waste Services, City of LA, and stadium operator USC will work together to make sure the different kinds of trash is fully recyclable and ready for composting.
We help the recycler. Where people do the normal thing, everything else we take to one of our plants, we separate all the valuable recyclables, and then if we choose to, we can take them to a facility that'll transfer all of the residual waste into energy.
The Coliseum plans to start using different food packaging materials so that nothing goes to waste.
Those items that we use to package all of the things that you get, your hot dog wrappers, your nacho trays, your condiment boats, all of those things need to be based in a fiber form if we're going to be able to get a benefit out of it.
Officials say recycling bins and other trash containers will be available for fans to dispose their trash, and Athens Waste will take care of the rest. Officials say between 7 and 10 tons of trash is generated after each football game. Well, it's the new way to get around town. Downtown LA, to be exact, as Metro gets set to launch its bike share program in one of LA's hippest and fastest growing communities. Gil Reyes has more from downtown.
The very first kiosk in LA Metro's bike share program, which officially kicks off on Thursday, July 7th. There will be 65 rental kiosks just like this one throughout the downtown LA area, all of them conveniently placed at or near transit stops.
The point is to get more Metro commuters to bicycle instead of drive to and from transit stops and ditch their cars as much as possible.
This is going to be for people who don't own a bike already. So.
It's also for downtown visitors like Elijah Cathaway. He and his pals could rent bikes here after arriving at Union Station, then bicycle and drop them off at 64 other rental kiosks throughout downtown. Kiosks will be located at popular destinations like the Broad Museum, the Arts District, and Chinatown. They'll also sit within walking distance of transit stops, so between riding Metro and cycling, he never has to drive a car. Bike share pass holders pay $20 a month for unlimited half-hour rentals, and starting in August, you can rent at the kiosk by credit card. $3.50 for a half-hour ride.
I think we're at that tipping point in the city of LA where, for a long time it was so car-centric. Now we're promoting more alternative forms of transportation, more light rail, more bikes, more pedestrian activity in our streets. And that's a good thing for the environment. It's a good thing for our health. It's a good thing all around to alleviate our roads.
Downtown Councilman Jose Huizar goes on a preview ride. In preparation for Metro Bike Share in July, the city has added protective bike lanes with barriers to shield cyclists on a stretch of Los Angeles Street. More of these protective bike lanes are expected on Main and Spring Streets down the road. In downtown LA, I'm Gil Reyes for LA This Week.
There will be 1,000 bikes available for rent in the downtown LA area starting in July. All 65 kiosks will be open 24 hours a day. Get your bike share pass at metro.net/bikeshare. LAPD is going green. The initiative is part of the city's sustainable plan to have more than half of new city vehicles to be fully electric by next year. Rasha Goel has more. Rasha.
Yana, I'm here in downtown Los Angeles where officials have announced the addition of 100 new electric vehicles to the LAPD fleet. Now, these vehicles are being leased for 3 years, and they cost about $387 a month, which covers their repairs, maintenance costs, and operational costs. Officials also fill us in on why these vehicles will be a huge added benefit for the city and for the LAPD.
They have no internal combustion engine, so they will emit zero pollution, require no gasoline whatsoever. So the air of Los Angeles is cleaned up. And with every single existing LAPD vehicle that we take off the road and replace with one of these electric vehicles, we eliminate tailpipe emissions, reduce greenhouse gas emissions by an estimated 76% overall.
These BMW i3 all-electric plug-in vehicles will be used for certain LAPD functions.
The majority of the cars operated by the Los Angeles Police Department are not black and white patrol vehicles. The majority of our fleet are made for detectives, are used by our 3,000 civilian employees in doing the day-to-day business of the city and the day-to-day policing of the city.
They're not going to be for emergencies or for pursuit.
The cost for leasing the 100 cars is about $1.4 million, with an additional $1.5 million for the infrastructure to charge the BMWs and other electric vehicles purchased in the future.
Normally, we keep the sedans of this class for 6 years in operation. So what we're looking to do is use the vehicles. The lease is for 36 months, 3 years, at almost zero cost maintenance and practically zero cost using fossil fuel.
The LAPD's i3 deal could lead to a deal for vehicles more appropriate for patrol work. Police Chief Charlie Beck says the department is continuing to work with BMW, Tesla, and other automakers to create a more capable electric vehicle. In downtown Los Angeles, I'm Rasha Goel for LA This Week.
Mayor Eric Garcetti says the city plans to acquire 100 additional electric vehicles this fiscal year. While an oil facility in South LA faces more stringent oversight after a lawsuit settlement honoring the contributions of immigrants in the U.S., and time to make a splash as the summer swim season kicks into high gear. All these stories in City Beat. City Attorney Mike Feuer announced that he has secured a court order that puts in place important protections for the South LA community and environment in regulating the Alanco oil facility, which, according to Feuer, put the health and safety of residents at risk. The court order details specific regulations and further approvals that Alanco must follow and obtain before it's ever to reopen and begin pumping oil again. Alanco is also required to provide a state-of-the-art environmental safety monitoring system and pay $1.25 million in civil penalties.
We sued Alanco to protect the people living in the surrounding community, low-income people, people who very rarely have someone standing up for them.
Councilmember Gil Cedillo introduced a resolution designating June as Immigrant Heritage Month, a nationwide effort to gather, share, and celebrate inspirational stories of immigration in the U.S. and the individuals, families, and communities who have contributed to the country's unique social diversity.
We believe here that it's important to create a sense of comfort, a sense of being welcomed, a sense of unity, a sense of solidarity.
The Department of Recreation and Parks, Councilmember Curran Price, and Bureau of Engineering kicked off the 2016 summer swim season with the reopening of the Central Pool and Kaiser Permanente's Operation Splash program, which provides swim lessons for children and adults in low-income areas. The Central Pool at 22nd Street was damaged in the 1994 Northridge earthquake and closed its doors in 2004. 2 years ago, it began a multi-million-dollar renovation that now includes a children's splash area.
I'm having such a great time with my daughter, spending time, and I feel grateful to know that we have programs here for the summer.
Well, While keeping animals at the LA Zoo well-fed sometimes requires creative solutions. As Rich Samuels explains, a new collaboration with a local nonprofit is making some animals very happy.
Our non-native plants feed their non-native animals.
The Palos Verdes Peninsula Land Conservancy is in the midst of a habitat restoration project, and that means acacia has got to go.
The animals don't use it as much as they would use the local native flora, so they actually block out any other plants from growing underneath them, and they spread pretty rambunctiously.
They're also very flammable. So with the help of a team from AmeriCorps, a federally funded public service organization, the acacia are being removed and replaced with native vegetation. That's good news for native plants and great news for the LA Zoo.
The acacia is something that we can use at the zoo to feed to a lot of the different animals. Everything from monkeys on up to giraffes loves to eat acacia.
While the zoo grows some of its own food, it depends on community partnerships like these to meet the demands of zoo residents. In addition to giraffes and monkeys, elephants, antelopes, and a wide range of other animals also enjoy acacia. From the Alta Vicente Reserve in Rancho Palos Verdes, this is Rich Samuels for LA This Week.
The Habitat Restoration Project is ongoing, which means there's more good eating in store for our friends at the LA Zoo. While emerging LA artists showcase their work, get up close and personal with the beauty of modern design, and a view of the city that'll literally take your breath away. All this in this week's Things to Do. The Hammer Museum's biannual exhibition series Made in LA focuses exclusively on artists from the LA region with an emphasis on emerging and under-recognized artists. The Los Angeles Biennial debuts new installations, videos, films, sculptures, performances, and paintings commissioned specifically for the exhibition and offers insight into the current trends and practices coming out of Los Angeles, one of the most active and energetic art communities in the world. The Hammer Museum is located at 10899 Wilshire Boulevard. For more, visit hammer.ucla.edu. It's America's largest modern design event. Dwell on Design is a 3-day exhibition and conference comprised of 1 trade day and 2 consumer days at the Los Angeles Convention Center, featuring world-class speakers, product demonstrations, continuing education classes for design professionals, and seminars for design-seeking consumers. For more information, visit la.dwellondesign.com. Sky Space LA boasts a thrill experience unlike any other. Sky Slide, an outdoor glass slide positioned nearly 1,000 feet above downtown LA. The Sky Slide is 45 feet long, approximately 4 feet wide, and made entirely with 1 1/4-inch thick glass. Visitors will experience Sky Slide's unparalleled views in a whole new way as they glide from the 70th to the 69th floor of the U.S. Bank Tower. From interactive and educational components to the spectacular design, Sky Space LA is the ideal family-friendly attraction and the tallest open-air observation deck. It opens on Saturday, June 25th and located at 633 West 5th Street. For more, visit skyspace-la.com. And that's a look at some things to do. Well, that's going to do it for this edition. I'm Yana Kane. From all of us here at LA This Week, thanks for joining us. A reminder that you can catch us online at lacityview.org. You can also follow and like us on Facebook. We'll see you back here next week for more of LA This Week.
escapes from a wildfire can travel more than a mile. You can't control where the ember will land, only what happens when it does. Get Fire Adapted now at fireadapted.org.
It all started that one day. I knew then my destiny. To have a career where I can achieve my best, where every day is different, where lifelong friendships are made, where I'm saving lives and inspiring others. My name is Mackenzie Vandergeest, and I am a Los Angeles firefighter.
Hi, I'm Nina. This is my daughter Miranda, and we live in Silver Lake. We love the cultural diversity of Los Angeles. You're watching LA City View, Channel 35. Our city, our channel.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is Tuesday, June 21st. I want to welcome all of you to your Los Angeles City Council. This council meets every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m. The public is welcome. Madam Clerk, I believe we have a quorum. Could you call the roll?
Blumenfield, Bonin, Buscaino, Cedillo, Englander, Fuentes, Harris Dawson, Huizar, Koretz, Krikorian, Martinez, O'Farrell, Price, Rue, Wesson. 13 members and a quorum, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you. First order of business.
Approval of the minutes.
Mr. Englander moves. Mr. Blumenfield seconds. Next.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Mr. Price moves. Mr. Huizar seconds.
Mr. President, today is Tuesday and time for the flag salute.
Okay, we'll be led in our flag salute today by Mr. Curran Price.
Thank you. Place your right hand over your heart. Ready to begin? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Let's go through the agenda.
Mr. President, there is a request to continue item 12 to tomorrow, Wednesday, June 22nd, and to include in the agenda description the closed session language that was previously included on the council agenda of June 7th.
Okay, so without objection, that'll be the order. Continue.
There's also a request to continue items 1A and C to August 3rd.
Okay, without objection.
And the Department of Building and Safety recommends that 1B be received and filed as the initial fees have been paid and late fees rescinded.
Okay, without objection. Continue.
Items 1 through 4 are items noticed for public hearing.
Do we have cards?
Yes, there are cards on 1 and 2.
Okay, let's hold those. Prepare to vote on the others. Let's open the roll.
Excuse me, Mr. President, there's a request on item 2. Mr. O'Farrell requests to continue that item to August 16th.
Okay, on item 2, without objection, we will continue that to August what? Okay, that works. We can do that. So let's vote on, I guess it's 3 and 4. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
Okay, let's go through items, this next set of items, 5 through 24.
Yes, 5 through 24 are items for which public hearings have been held. The Budget and Finance Committee reports for items 9 and 10 have been submitted and circulated for council consideration.
Okay, so let's hold item 11. Members, any other specials? Then let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
Mr. O'Farrell.
Item 21 forthwith, please.
Item 21 forthwith. Continue, Madam Clerk.
Items 25 through 30 are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Okay, so without objection, those items are now before us. Do we have cards?
Yes, there are cards on 25, 28, 29, and 30.
Let's hold those items. Prepare to vote on what's left. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
Mr. Krikorian? In fact, Madam Clerk, we're not at the closed session.
Yes, the next section are the items 31 through 35, which are scheduled for closed session.
Thank you, Mr. President. Items 31 through 35 are all personal injury cases. They are settlements that have been considered by Budget and Finance. Budget and Finance recommends approval of the recommendations on all of those items. That can be done in open session unless members have questions or concerns. But, Mr. President, I would like to point out that item 33, there is a technical error in the agenda in that the intersection described is incorrect. It says in the agenda Laurel Canyon and Archwood. In fact, the intersection was Sepulveda Boulevard north of the intersection of Regent Street.
Okay, let's amend it to make that correction. Now, if you could read the items, Madam Clerk.
Yes, on item 31, in the case entitled Alex Alexander, there's a recommendation to expend $125,000 in settlement. Item 32, case entitled Kim Van Bien versus City of Los Angeles, there's a recommendation to expend $400,000 in settlement. Item 33, in the case entitled Ursat Sozo Demar versus City of Los Angeles, there's a recommendation to expend $400,000 in settlement. And item 34, in the case entitled Sonia Dominguez versus the City of Los Angeles, there's a recommendation to expend $175,000 in settlement. And on item 35, in the case entitled Frank Velasco versus the City of Los Angeles, there's a recommendation to expend $400,000 in settlement.
Okay, let's prepare to vote on those items. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
And could we vote on reconsideration for item 24? Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
Let's leave that on the desk, Mr. Rue.
Go forthwith.
18 forthwith at Mr. Rue's request. That brings us where?
Mr. President, that takes council back to presentations, items called special or general public comment.
Mr. Bloomingfield, would you like to begin? Then the floor is yours.
Morning, colleagues. It is my honor to recognize a familiar face to all of us here in Council, a man without whom our voices might never be heard. I'm talking about Ken Moody. Ken is one of 4 members of the ITA Council audio team, and he's retiring after 32 years of service with the city. The groans are because we're going to miss you. He has an amazing and storied career. He began his career with the city on June 25th, 1984 as an ACE. What's an ACE? It's Assistant Communications Electrician in the General Services Division, where he was responsible for installing communications equipment in vehicles for the LAPD and the LAFD. He was also the lead in ordering and tracking radio and electronic equipment at the then newly opened Piper Tech Center. He worked his way into the paramedic video lab, and through his hard work and dedication was promoted to communications electrician, where he repaired the defibrillators in the shop, as well as video cameras and systems at the police stations throughout the city. In 2000, Ken became a fill-in as needed member of the council audio crew. In 2001, he was permanently assigned to the team, and since then, 2001, he has provided audio services to various mayors, council members, commissioners, department heads, state and federal officials, religious leaders, foreign dignitaries. He makes it all happen. He has been present for countless council and committee meetings, press conferences, citywide events. He makes us sound better. He has been a great asset to the council audio crew, and I, my staff, and the rest of the city family really will not only miss your expertise, but will miss your smile, your sense of humor, and just your calm demeanor when crazy things are happening on this microphone and you need to turn it down quickly or all of our ears will be broken. You're there on the spot. So let's give it up for Ken. Now, before we have a certificate, as you've seen this happen before, so it's not a big surprise. But before I give you your certificate, I want to bring up Ted Ross, the head of ITA, who wants to say a few words about Ken. Ted?
Thank you very much, Councilman. The Information Technology Agency is filled with technology staff who work behind the scenes. And it's almost ironic how we work behind the scenes in such a visible, such a transparent area such as council chambers. Ken has worked for all these years very diligently. He shows up first, he leaves last, he works in remote location, he works in commissions, he works at committees, and he of course works in the council chambers themselves. Ken has a joke, and he shares it with all sorts of people. Ken always says, I've been with the city 32 years, but I've worked for 3. All jokes aside, Ken, very few people I know have put in the time and the energy and the effort like Ken Moody in so many different ways. We will sincerely miss you. We truly appreciate your service, and I truly thank the council members for recognizing someone who, like a lot of us good city employees, are working behind the scenes. Thank you so much.
Mr. Blumenfield, I'd like to recognize another member, if that works for you. Mr. Fuentes.
Thank you, Mr. Wesson. Ken, I just want to formally, in this microphone, in this room, thank you for all of your service to the city of Los Angeles. I've had the pleasure of serving as staff longer than, well, up until recently, longer than an elected official. And when you go to events, it almost seems like there's one person aside from the elected official that's always at the events, and that's you. And I'll say that in many ways it's more refreshing to see you oftentimes because you're always smiling and you make the show work. And I've been to events where there's rain, I've been to events where there's a lot of stress, some very sad moments for the city of Los Angeles, some very happy moments for the city of Los Angeles. But the stabilizing force to all of those events has been your presence, your skill, and your ability to make sure that the show continues. So thank you very much, Ken.
And you know, Mr. Blumenfield, I mean, you're the professional's professional. But what a lot of people don't know is because he's behind the scenes, he's funnier than all get out. He is the king of one-liners, and I just want to, you know, when I'm down or things are kind of tense, he'll give me a wise crack. I can't even envision what it's going to be like without you, not only here in this building, but like Mr. Fuentes said, rain or shine throughout the city of L.A., you're the man and you're always there. So we appreciate all that you've done, and all of us, all of the members and all of our staff and your co-workers are going to miss you very much, and we wish you the best.
Ken, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, testing 1, 2. No, I just said thank everybody, all the council members. You're very patient with me. When I mess up, I forget to turn on a mic. I turn off the mic too soon. I just want to thank you all for bearing with me when I mess up. So thank you. It's been a wonderful 32 years. I've met a lot of nice people, and I'll miss you guys. But thank you. Yeah.
Mr. Blumenfield, I do not remember any mess-ups, okay?
Now, I heard that upon retirement you might renew. He used to have a pyrotechnics license. You might renew that license and get things going. So don't be surprised if I call you for my July 4th extravaganza, because we want to get your expertise. You can keep the sound and you can deafen our ears with the pyrotechnics. So please accept this certificate of appreciation. It's signed by all the members of this chamber as well as the mayor.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
We can go to the back and take a photo. Okay. We'll do an official one in the back.
Thank you.
Chamber.
I think we should get back on the board.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, members, we're going to take up item 11 at this time. Okay, on item 11, I'll make a motion that we move the committee report. Can I get a second? Second. Got a second? There's no speakers on the queue on item 11. Mr. Root.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think this is a very important initiative, and I really thank all the folks who worked and mobilized to work on getting this on the ballot. However, I feel that I think it would be better if this ballot proposition was on the March ballot. So because of that, I'm going to have to vote no.
Okay. No more speakers on the queue again. I move the committee report. It's been seconded by Mr. Buscaino. Madam Clerk, if you'd open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 ayes, 1 no.
Okay, that moves forward. Anyway, for those of you that were here on item 11, it's been passed, and the...
And for clarification, Mr. President, that ordinance will be held over for 1 week to June 28th.
Okay, let's go to item 1. Mr. Walsh and Ms. McAllister. On item 1. Wait, Ms. Ramirez, you're disrupting the meeting. Please be quiet. Okay, Ms. Ramirez, we're going to have to ask you to leave. Sergeants, would you? Sergeants, please remove Ms. Ramirez. She is continuing to disrupt this meeting. You will be removed. She's continuing to do that. Let's have her removed.
John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org or J. Walsh Confidential, tweeting at Hollywood Dems. This is item
Hold on,
1.
Mr. Walsh. I'll give you time back. She is continuing to disrupt the meeting.
You know, my real name is Pedro
No, Mr. Walsh, just wait.
I just speak English good.
Sergeants, before she gets in any more trouble, please take her outside. She is continuing, Mr. City Attorney, to disrupt our meeting. Yeah. Okay, Mr. Walsh.
John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org. Number 1 is the building and safety. As I've said, you do an excellent job in building and safety. Every time I've gone to you, and I came here in 1966, I have had absolutely great treatment, building and safety, with all the mayors. So When you do a good job, I'm the first to praise you. When you do a shitty job, I'm the first to dump on you. HollywoodHighlands.org.
Ms. McAllister, did I get a card? Item 1.
Good morning, Mr. President. Welcome back. Number 1 is very dear to me. We need to bring in some of these people who are having liens put in their homes, and we want to meet them. We want to hear their stories. We want them to meet the politicians here who are voting against them and charging them 250% interest on the lien. We want them to meet these people, and we want to hear their stories, how they've been put out of their homes and how they've lost their jobs to illegal aliens who come here and have babies, and the babies have Social Security numbers and birth certificates, and they get the jobs and the housing. So we want to meet these people. I've been asking you for months to lower that 250% to 0% or no more than 20%, and you refuse to do that. I say that the people need not be afraid of you. You have blood running through your veins, I think, just like we do. So I say the people should come down here, talk to you. Don't be afraid of you, even though they've been intimidated quite a bit. The people are afraid of politicians, especially the Jews. So I say come on down here and talk to the council and let them hear your story, because people are suffering. Everywhere you drive in this country, you see people on the street, homeless. So we want to know about these liens, and we want that $2.6 million that you have in the Handy Worker program. We want these people to get that. When I say get that, you're supposed to send people out to their homes and fix those violations, and these people get up to $5,000 to have them fixed. So we need more people to know about this Handy Worker program, and we need them to get the money, and we don't want the money going in your pockets. Thank you.
Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Item 28, Mr. Walsh.
Minute 2, item 28. This concerns the installation of a star for Miss Shirley Caesar, Miss Champagne Shirley Caesar. This makes up, remember, if your skin is black, your chances of getting a star and you're a star and you're well known, your chances of getting a star are very, very small. Apparently, this is a case where you're putting in a star. I would like to find out, I want to know what percentage of stars on Hollywood Boulevard are minorities. And Shirley Caesar certainly deserves a star on Hollywood Boulevard. And we're 100% in favor of her star on Hollywood Boulevard. Hollywood.
Madam Chair, that concludes cards on item 28. Let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the votes.
14 ayes.
Let's move on to item 30.
On item 30, a substitute motion has been circulated for council's consideration.
Can I have 2 speaker cards here? Mr. Walsh on item 30, sir.
John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org. This is some of the old redevelopment money. Remember, we kicked the shit out of redevelopment. It's dead now, but it still had hundreds of millions of dollars in debt. This is paying it off. It's about CDBG, Community Development Block Grant. It's about close to $5,000. The Jordan Downs redevelopment plan. We killed redevelopment People laughed, said you'll never kill redevelopment. I survived redevelopment. And redevelopment's number one target, of course, were minorities, especially in places like Jordan Downs, $75,000, $250,000, $300,000. We've done an excellent job. We're not jerking off here. We are getting between them and the money.
The next speaker was Antonia Ramirez, but she was escorted out of our meeting, Mrs. Clerk, so can you please note that for the record? That concludes cards on this item. We have 2 votes before us, members, one on whether to substitute, so let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Okay, that motion is before us. Let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Okay, let's move on to item 29. Excuse me, ma'am, I don't have a card for you on that item. Item 29. Mr. Walsh? Ms. Ramirez also filed a card. Please note she was asked to leave the meeting.
John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org. Don't misplace her card. 29 is the... What a joke, the airport peace officer. You know, you don't hear me getting up and supporting the LAPD, but this phony police department that we have out there is chaotic. We have tried again and again to abolish this police force and to have LAPD run the police force. No other major city in America has its own phony airport police force that's separate from the city police force. But there's a lot of corruption out there. You don't give a syphilitic rat's ass about the corruption, but airport peace officers are bajo.
That concludes cards, Madam Clerk, on this item. Like I said it before, Ms. Ramirez did fill out a card, but she was removed from our meeting for disrupting our council meeting earlier. So let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Okay, Madam Clerk, let's move on to item 25. That was called special for cards, correct?
Correct.
Mr. Walsh, item 25, followed by Dan, item 25. You want to go first, Dan? Sure.
Sure, thank you. Council members, I have an article about the commissioner who you're going to be talking about right now in City Watch LA. In my article, I point out that Mr. Wolfson has missed 4 meetings this year. Mr. Wolfson was late or missed 41% of the meetings in 2015. He was late or missed 41% of the meetings in 2015. We don't know what his attendance record was in 2014 because 76% of the meeting minutes are still not posted, and he has refused to post them. Mr. Wolfson owes the city money. He only paid his dog license fees once he was appointed. He did not pay the back license fees that he owes. He did not pay late fees that all other Angelenos have to pay. Mr. Wesson had to pay those late fees. So why does this commissioner not have to pay back fees or late fees? Also, Mr. Wolfson's resume in the council file is untrue. It says he's a member of the Connecticut and the D.C. and the New York Bar Association. But council members, Mr. Wolfson is suspended from the D.C. Bar Association. Mr. Wolfson is suspended from the Connecticut Bar Association. Mr. Wolfson is suspended from the New York Bar Association and not inactive. It's not that he's inactive. He has been suspended from 3 bar associations that his council file says he's a member of. So the man doesn't show up for meetings. He referred to Animal Services as a leaking rowboat with too many holes to plug, but never did anything about it. He owes the city money. He's been suspended from 3 bar associations, and that is just the beginning. So it is a lie. He owes the city money, and he doesn't show up for meetings.
The next speaker is Mr. Walsh, followed by Patricia McAllister on item 25.
John Walsh at Hollywood.
Mr. Walsh, before you start, you have 1 minute left, sir.
HollywoodHighlands.org or J. Walsh Confidential. Mr. Roger S. Werewolfson. The reason Mr. Werewolfson was appointed by the mayor is that he's gorgeous. Have you seen him? He's gorgeous. And as you know, I'm sure that Glenn Dake, the mayor's lover, is angry and jealous. But Mr. Werewolfson, has been doing a terrible job. Actually, I think it's good that he doesn't show up to the meetings. Let's get it up to 100% he doesn't show up at the meetings. Hollywood, and as it's concerned here, we're going to put in the most gorgeous men that the mayor can find. That's why he doesn't want to run for vice president. He'd have to come out, the mayor. HollywoodHighlands.org.
Next speaker is Patricia McAllister on item 25.
Okay, I want to talk about this money that the city wants to give Jordan Downs. It says here $4,974,000.
She's not talking about item 25.
That's what I was told I could do because of the mishandling of number 30. They said I can talk about 30 on this one. That's what I was told by security.
They're
no,
wrong.
security is not the city attorney and certainly not running this meeting. So please speak to item 25. Thank you.
Okay, I don't know what you guys did with my car, but I know why you didn't let me talk, because I'm going to reveal some stuff. And you know I'm like a Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. Number 25, sure, I can talk about 25. Communications from the mayor and City Ethics Committee relative to the reappointment of Mr. Roger L. Wolfman to the Board of Animals. Now, Mr. Wolfman sounds like another Jew. We've got all these Jews on these different committees, 600 lawyers, 550 Jews. Jews don't run this city. You hear me? It's run by blacks, whites, and everybody else, not just Jews. And Jewry is a religion, in case people don't know. So we have Christians, we have Jews, we have Protestants, we have Muslims. We all run this country. Every time I see an appointment, I see another Jew. And every time you pile Jews on, that means they're running it. That's right. Even the homosexual Jews, they're running it through the homosexual community. So I have plenty to say about these appointments. We need more black people being appointed. What I see in the housing committee, it's dominated by Hispanics. That's why the Hispanics have the affordable housing. And you go to these agencies, the welfare agencies, and they're run by Hispanics. That's why blacks don't get the housing, because they give those housing to illegal aliens. So we need to change some of these appointments and get some black people in here and some white people. I want to see more white people, not Jews, but Christians. Thank you.
Okay, that concludes cards on this item. Madam Clerk, can you open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote?
13 ayes.
Madam Clerk, let's move on to public comment. Mr. Walsh. Mr. Walsh, followed by Dan and Patricia McAllister.
John Walsh, honorary chair of Anybody But Englander for supervisor. They laughed. They said, whatever John Walsh says, it isn't going to happen. He's got $2 million. He's going to win. And what did he come in? Top 2? No. Top 3? No. England, the top 4? No. Top 5. He came in number 5. He's at home now sobbing into his pillow because, remember, 70 to 90,000 people will watch what I'm saying here. Again and again, we said anybody but an Englander, and they went. Hey, I'm not jerking off here. The public went to the polls, and they voted for anybody but an Englander. So he's sentenced to be here for the rest of his life. HollywoodHighlands.org.
Next speaker is Dan, followed by Patricia McAllister.
Council members, in a 2011 email, Mr. Koretz referred to one of the Animal Services predecessors. Mr. Koretz wrote that a commissioner violating a leash law or a license law that she voted on or at least clearly knew about is unacceptable. The fact that she acted once she was caught and licensed shouldn't impress anyone. Your commissioner is an idiot and absolutely should go. That's Mr. Koretz's written words from 2011 about Mr. Wolfson's predecessor, Ruth Ann Secunda. So the question is, why is Mr. Wolfson treated any better than Ms. Secunda was? So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. If you're allowing a commissioner to cheat the city, because as of today, he's cheating the city, my next article will be for Huffington Post, and I will show everybody in Los Angeles how you don't have to pay dog licensing fees. And you're going to see the revenue for animal services go through the floor. It doesn't apply to him. It doesn't apply to everybody else.
Next speaker is Patricia McAllister, followed by Jacqueline Richardson and Leah Renee.
As some of you know, I was a teacher with Los Angeles Unified School District. I'm a computer scientist with a degree in computer science, and I taught math. I have 30 hours of math. Now, here's the deal. I was to have an administrative hearing based on the embezzlement of teacher retirement funds, and it was supposed to be this Thursday. Well, guess what? Since I've gotten so much attention on this, and I've invited millions of people to attend, they emailed me and contacted me and asked me to postpone it. They wanted to postpone it from this Thursday to October. Okay, yes, to October. And I said, yes, I agreed with them. No problem with me. So I'll keep you updated, but October 20th, 2016. And it's at the Administrative Hearing Office, 320 West 4th Street. So don't show up this Thursday. They begged me to change the date because they want to do some investigation. I've got enough to send about 25 people to prison. So here's the deal. Do your job, quit stealing, quit lying, and quit cheating. Thank you.
The next speaker is Jacqueline Richardson, followed by Leah Renee.
White immigrants from across the sea come in here to break open your little piggy bank. Some of them have criminal records as long as their arm. Some of them do not pay taxes, just like me. However, there are some white people with piggy banks larger than yours who will help them if they lead cleaner lives, for instance, if they don't have 3 wives who they emotionally abuse or distress, if they do not have illegitimate children who they do not financially support. If these white people live cleaner lives, the white piggy banks will help them with anything they want. Anything that's decent, they will help them.
Next speaker, Leah Renee.
Hi, Mayor Garcetti and honorable council members. I'd like to bring to your attention, you probably need a cure and correct. I attended the Plum meeting with the substandard Hillside Limited Street, and none of my documents were put into the file, and they're extremely important. You're not writing the codes correctly. And how do you have a fair justice system or even a city council if you trick the people? So I put it in again today, and I hope it's in the right file. I don't know how you can vote on something that has the wrong code, so I'm just going to read what the code should say. Substandard Hillside Limited Street is a street that does not meet the requirements defined in section 12.03, which is a width less than 36 feet, paved to less than 28 feet. You're trying to change it to less than 20 feet. And that harms an extraordinary amount of people because the firemen died, the policemen died, and a lot of these are on streets that are 20 feet and 22 feet wide. So to cut that out and make it only less than 19 feet, you actually do a disservice to the people of the city of Los Angeles. Thank you very much. I bought, because you didn't put it in, I'm going to
Thank you very much.
To all of you, the actual codes.
You can hand it to the sergeant. That concludes public comment. Item 24. Sorry, Mr. Krikorian? Your mic's not on. Hold on for just a second. Go ahead.
I'd like to request that items 31 through 35 be sent forthwith, please.
Items 31 through 35 sent forthwith from Mr. Krikorian. Madam Clerk, let's move on to item 24. I believe there's an amendment that's being circulated. Is that correct, Ms.?
Yes, Madam President. Motion 24A has been circulated for Council's consideration.
Very well. Mr. Bonin. We're having technical difficulties with Mr. Bonin's mic.
Are we working? There we go. Thank you, Madam President. I want to rise, first of all, and thank Mr. Harris Dawson and Mr. Weezar for their incredible leadership on this issue in trying to make sure that we have a regular and sustainable funding source to deal with the crisis of homelessness in Los Angeles. And I want to thank President Wesson for his leadership in committee. There is no one who has the ability that he has to help land a plane and help get this council to take action and move in a bold and decisive direction. And I'm very pleased to see us moving forward with a couple of proposals to address homelessness in Los Angeles and find a funding stream. I did have some concerns with the recommendations out of committee, however, and wanted to suggest some tweaks and changes that I think could strengthen it. There is a rare opportunity we have in Los Angeles right now to come up with a funding stream for homelessness, particularly for permanent supportive housing. In the polling that we have done, polling done by Mr. Harris Dawson and Mr. Weezar, polling done by the county, polling done by Home for Good, we have seen that there is an incredible hunger and appetite to fund programs for homelessness, particularly permanent supportive housing. And I want to make sure that as we address this problem, permanent supportive housing is what we wind up funding. When we approved the comprehensive homelessness strategy back in February, and we were all very excited about what we had done, I noted that we were starting a marathon. And on that date, we hadn't done anything but fill out the registration forms for the marathon. And as we proceed, I want to make sure that we have the funding and the requirements in place to actually run that marathon and not just do a 5K or a 10K. And I want to caution that I think that what we need to be doing is putting our money into permanent supportive housing. And so what I'd like to see is for us to increase the amount of money in the bond and also require that 10,000 units of permanent supportive housing be built. I'm concerned with proposals that allow us to start funding units of 80% or 100% or even 60% of AMI. That effectively results in a lot of affordable housing, which we need, but it means that units for people who are currently living in encampments and the homelessness just won't get built. It is so costly to build permanent supportive housing, so hard to find locations for permanent supportive housing, so difficult to put that together. If we don't require that permanent supportive housing be done, it simply won't happen. All the money in a bond will go towards other levels of affordable housing. And in some cases, we would be asking folks in some of our districts who might not make $60,000 a year to be paying money to provide housing for someone who does make $60,000 a year. So I submitted an amending motion today which has exactly the same language for the bond language as the committee report, but it asks for a higher dollar value of $1.5 billion and asks that we guarantee that 10,000 units of permanent supportive housing be built and that be for extremely low income. And then we could have up to 25% of the total bond dollars for very low income, which is 31 to 50% of AMI. And I want to thank Mr. Wesson for agreeing to have this discussion on this motion in a special committee meeting next Wednesday. say. And I hope that that's the direction we go in to make sure that we get the most bang for our buck and we do the most to move people out of the encampments, out of our shelters, off our streets, out of the RVs on our streets, and into permanent housing so we can solve this problem once and for all. Thank you, Mr. Wesson.
Thank you, Mr. Bonnie. Mr. Cedillo? Mr. Cedillo?
Gilbert. Let me echo the words of my colleague. I appreciate both the leadership and the efforts of the Homeless Committee, and I appreciate Mr. Bonin's zealousness towards special needs housing. I share those concerns. But I am also the chair of housing, and I say to you, while we may go to different rooms to have these discussions during the week, the fact of the matter is that we need it all. And that it's a false argument to pose one against the other. That in fact, we need housing at all levels. And so we're not going to get a lot of opportunities to do this. And while you may be right, you don't want someone who has special need housing to pay for someone who has makes $60,000 a year. My concern is, for us to be successful, we have to make sure that those who make $60,000 and beyond find it in their interest to vote for and support special needs housing. Now, my experience is modest, but I will share this with you. I recall we worked on Measure R, the first bond, the rail bond that everybody praises today, that we're also pleased about, that we're going to do it again. It was a product of Mayor Villaraigosa's vision, this subway to the sea. And this is what he wanted. But it was going to fail because it didn't have enough for the entirety, because the needs of the region were larger than just that one subway to the sea. And so we had to build this coalition. I was part of it with Bob Margette, Bob Huff, Mike Ng, others from the San Gabriel Valley. We had to build a coalition that made it broader and more inclusive for the purposes of making and ensuring that Mayor Villaraigosa's vision was realized. And so I say the same thing here, that we need to learn from those recent lessons of history, that it's so important. Mike, it is so important what you're saying, that we should not and cannot risk failing if we keep it too exclusive. And so my concern is that I share your concern for special needs housing, but strategically and morally, but strategically, we have to have a broader vision to be successful. In other words, we need a rising tide that will lift more boats. Because if not, my concern is that while you and I and all of us here and in this community of people who care deeply about this are zealous about it, as we should be, that the broader community is not. And that unless we do that, unless we broaden our vision, make it more comprehensive, direct this towards the self-interest that drives so many people, that we will fail in that is so important to you and I. And so I'm simply suggesting and arguing for the same objective, for the same goals, the same values, but a strategic perspective that broadens it so that we can be successful for the specific concern that we have and for the broader concerns, because they're all essential. Homelessness is not caused by one circumstance. For the 26,000 or the 40,000 homeless people in this region, there is a specific reason for each and every homeless person. And so we have to fashion a strategy that's the broadest, and that has the greatest impact, that raises the most votes. Let me tell you one final story. I have a community of homeless people that I consult with to give me a perspective on why people are homeless. I take a trip periodically. I get off on Woodman in the valley. And so after one of our discussions, I saw two women standing on the corner. And I went to go talk to them. I pulled over and took them aside, bought them some water, asked them for their time. And so they're a group, these two sisters. They're not mentally ill.
They're not alcoholic. They're not drug dependent. 2 people from Cleveland. Cleveland had a better day on Sunday.
Yes, we did.
2 people from Cleveland, retirees, formerly employed, revenue streams, but because of the high cost of housing, are on the streets. Now, a day like this, hot as it is, and you're out on the street, I mean, that's enough to put you in this special needs category. And so what I'm saying is that we need to consider all the people. Where is my dear friend? We just did something for families. Consider all the different categories and figure out what's the broadest net that we can cast to raise all boats. And that, I say to you, is the more strategic manner to accomplish the goals that you and I share. So with that, I offer those considerations.
Thank you, Mr. Cedillo. The next speaker, Mr. Harris Dawson.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Bonin, for bringing this very, very good discussion to the floor today. This is exactly the kind of discussion that you want to have in a body like the LA City Council. Are we going to do something really, really good, or are we going to do something really, 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 really good? So I appreciate the tone and the tenor and the interest brought forward by both Mr. Bonin and Mr. Cedillo. I think it is correct that we're at a very important moment. The point of view that I want to enter into the record is that there is only one kind of housing that the market will never create. The market will never create permanent supportive housing. And so the way our society has run is when the market can't get something done is when the government intervenes. And so this is exactly, I think, what the spirit of what's being put forward with regard to a homelessness bond, a homelessness initiative, which is what we've talked about, I think, up until this point. The other very important fact that I want to make sure is part of the record, this is particularly true in my district, I imagine it's true in other districts as well. A bond, a parcel tax, anything that we're considering will take people in my district the value of their home, it's such that they're going to pay $100, $150, $200 a year. That's what we're asking them. And we're asking them to subsidize housing. In the case that we do something at 80% AMI, we're asking them to subsidize housing for people who have more income than they do. That's a serious moral question that we've got to ask as we go forward. And so I, too, have lots of questions about expanding the range and scope of what we do with this homelessness initiative. And again, thank everybody that's been involved, but ask that we all think really, really hard on it as we deliberate over the coming days.
The next speaker is Mr. Huizar.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Mr. Bonin, for submitting that motion and getting us all back on track where we started. You know, a few months ago, we passed a comprehensive strategic plan for homelessness. At that time, we spoke with our council leadership, Mr. Wesson and others, and we said we're going to embark upon finding a consistent revenue stream to fund this strategic plan. And there was a lot of studies done, a lot of discussions, polling, the metrics we've developed to get to where we are today with the proposals that we have today to ask the voters to commit themselves to solve this homelessness crisis is all based upon providing funding for those most in need, those between 0 to 30% AMI, or even those who are not anywhere near able to be considered in those categories. But to last minute propose that we make this as broad as possible is just disingenuous, and it doesn't speak to why we even started to do this in the first place. If the city was committed to solving the affordable housing crisis, that takes months of work, months of discussions, and we have not had those discussions the way we are today with homelessness, so that we could be in the brisk of providing a solution to people who desperately need the help and are sleeping on our streets. I propose that if we need a consistent and ongoing revenue stream to solve the affordable housing crisis, let's get that going. It's going to take months, folks. This does not come easy for us to be to this point. So for us to last minute come in here and change this and move in a different direction Folks, let me tell you something. It takes a lot more work to change and go in that direction than simply move in that direction and not be honest with the voters about us taking the time to say this is the best thing to do at this time. Folks, we decided months ago that we're going to go solve the homeless issue. We got to get on the track with affordable housing, but right now, to make a left turn on a path where we are going, it's not going to be good for us or the voters or solving this homelessness crisis. I ask that we stay on this path, keep it as a homeless bond, and not expand it as much as possible. As Mr. Harris Dawson said, if we ask folks to commit to an 80% AMI, people making anywhere between $54,000 to $74,000 would qualify to get some of this funding from the bond. But when we committed ourselves to help people, that's not what we started this on. There's different metrics involved, different analysis that has to be made. I suggest we get a revenue stream for homelessness, for affordable housing, but the metrics we have before us is based upon solving the homelessness crisis. I say we stay on this course. I look forward to the discussion in our committee. Thank you.
Mr. Ryu?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Mr. Bonin, Councilman Harris Dawson, and Councilman Huizar for all your eloquent comments. I fully agree. And thank you, Mr. Bonin, for allowing me to second your amendment. I think we stay on point, as Councilman Huizar says. This is a homeless initiative to tackle homelessness. So I'm not going to reiterate today, but I just had a quick question for the CAO. Can I?
Mr. Santana?
And I really thank the committee and Council President Wesson for actually bringing both options, both the parcel tax and the general fund obligation, to us, so we have more time, like today, to discuss it in committee and also in council to figure out exactly which option we want to choose at a later date. So I think this is a great compromise, and I'm very much comfortable with that. But I just wanted to quickly ask the CAO. I'm told that the general obligation bond is somewhat limited. Can you kind of explain the difference between the parcel tax and the general obligation bond?
Certainly, Miguel Santana, City Administrative Officer. As we indicated in our report, based on the advice that we received from our bond counsel, a GEO bond is clear that the city can purchase property with a GEO bond. The city can actually develop housing. But we must be the owners of both the property and the housing. So under a GEO bond, a strategy that would be pursued is that the city purchase property and then engage in a long-term lease with developers. And so the first stop for the development of any housing would be your council that would authorize the purchase of property throughout the city. And the city would be in the business of identifying parcels of land to purchase, buying that land under a framework where we no longer have the ability for eminent domain. So we would have to negotiate a price, fair market price. And then once we own that land, we would then enter a process, an RFP, to identify nonprofit developers to build it. It's similar to what we're pursuing now on the city-owned properties that are the various land that the city is pursuing today. What is not clear at this point is whether or not we could use a GEO bond to engage in other forms of affordable housing that have been traditional for the city, such as gap financing. Traditionally, what we do is oftentimes developers identify property, they purchase the property, they leverage federal, state, nonprofit sources of funds, and they come to the city with a gap, and then the city helps meet that gap. Under a traditional GEO bond, it's not clear at this point whether the city would have the flexibility to do so. We would have to go through a legal process to get authorization, and we've been advised that until we get that authorization that we not proceed with any bond issuances. And so this is a more ambiguous part of the law. So for the initial, if you wanted to stay exclusively within the framework of the use of bonds, we would advise that the city limit the program to purchasing the property only. Under a parcel tax, the parcel tax gives the city maximum flexibility to support not only the purchase of property, but also engage in a program to gap finance affordable housing as we have in the past. And you're limited by what we tell the voters that tax will fund. So if it's intended to fund elements of the homeless program that your council has adopted, including housing vouchers, including supporting the capacity of storage, including funding the coordinated entry system, which is the starting point of much of this work. The parcel tax gives you greater flexibility. There's no ambiguity in the law. There's no second process to seek authorization. And you could also securitize or borrow against the parcel tax to acquire property. So those are the two primary differences between the two revenue streams.
So thank you, Mr. Santana. So basically, a parcel tax gives us more flexibility, while a general obligation bond is a little bit more restrictive.
That's correct.
So again, that's why I thank the President for his leadership and giving us the opportunity to discuss this not just today but later in committee. And I do want more discussion because I'm conflicted. I love the flexibility of the parcel tax. I do know it's a little harder to pass, but at the same time, the general obligation bond goes to the heart of the matter because we are not the county. We are not in the service provision, and we want to focus, as Councilman Huizar has stated, on what we set out to do. And I really want to thank the Homeless Committee for all your work on this matter to even get us to this point. So I'm glad I don't have to make a decision today on whether we go parcel tax or general obligation bond, but I think this points out that we have a lot more to consider to see which way we're going to progress. But at the same time, I concur, which is why I seconded Councilman Bonin's motion, that we need to be focused on the situation and the problem at hand, which is trying to solve the homeless issue. So thank you, Mr. CEO.
Thank you.
Mr. Price?
Thank you, Madam President. I, too, want to thank the President and the Chair of the committee for all the work that's been done. I certainly am sensitive to the concerns raised by the Chair of Housing and his certainly accurate assessment that we need to have a big picture that's going to help all boats rise. But in this case, I think we got to be focused. I think we got to be focused on the homeless issue. That's what brought this discussion together in the first place, and I think we need to be focused on that. And certainly while creating affordable housing will help prevent, hopefully, future individuals from going into homelessness, we got to focus on those who are on the streets now, who are on the corners now. And so I think our discussion here makes a lot of sense. But back on the broader discussion, if we allowed up to 80% of AMI, what would be the estimated number of units created that we can create in that kind of scenario? What kind of rents are going to be generated if that were the framework?
Well, the way the motion is written, it establishes a minimum threshold of 10,000 units for permanent supportive housing. And then it establishes that anything beyond that, not to exceed 25% of the proceeds could go for anything above the minimum threshold for affordability. At this point in time, because, as I indicated when Mr. Ryu asked, the limitations around a GO bond make it difficult for us to establish exactly how many units we could create, because we would be under a GO bond unless we receive authorization from the court. We would be in the business of acquiring property and then partnering with private nonprofit developers for long-term leases for the development of those parcels. So, because the city is well developed and the city would have to engage in multi-strategies to purchase property. Obviously, large development land would be ideal, but we may have to engage in building, identifying smaller parcels. So it's hard today to give you a number as to how many units would be created, or to commit to a 10,000 number or any particular number of units. One way of considering the debate that's occurring, if the intent is to prioritize permanent supportive housing, which this motion establishes, one thing you could consider is to frame it around percentages of the amount that gets spent, so that because we don't know what the market's going to look like, we don't know what the cost of land's going to be, we don't know where the land's going to be bought. But if your intent is to commit that permanent supportive housing be prioritized, then you may want to frame it or think about it in terms of a percent versus a steadfast number, because at this point in time we could not commit to that.
Okay. Well, I think we definitely should move toward a specific number, and perhaps the percentage is the correct way to do it. But I think we need to prioritize.
That's correct.
Supportive housing. If a parcel tax were used, for example, could we use those funds for safe parking and for storage facilities? I mean, does the parcel tax give us any more flexibility in that regard?
So under a GEO bond, the city could purchase the property to expand storage capacity, but it could not utilize the bond to operate it. So we would have to identify another funding source unless authorized by the courts.
How about the parcel tax?
A parcel tax allows the city to purchase the property. It also allows the city to provide funding to operate and maintain that facility. In the same way with housing, it allows the city to purchase land. We could borrow against that tax. It allows the city to finance a part of a plan. So if a developer came in your district and asked or recommended building 100 units of housing, and they were able to, they had the land to buy, they had the funds to operate, they identify the gap to make the project pencil out. Under a parcel tax, the city will have the ability to help fund that gap, to leverage other sources of revenue. Under GEO bond, we would have to purchase the land and then make it available for development.
Well, again, I think we need to be focused, and anything we can do to provide resources and funding to solve the housing, the homelessness housing issue, I think should be the focus. Thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Buscaino.
Thank you. Miguel, if you can, years ago, prior to my arrival, maybe prior to the arrival of many on this horseshoe, there was a measure placed on a ballot, a housing measure, Prop H. Is that my understanding? Can you explain to me how is this before us different than Prop H that the voters did not approve?
I'll ask Yolanda if she could. Yolanda
Appreciate
Chavez, who was at the city at the time that Prop H was introduced.
Was Prop H similar framework?
Do you remember?
Hello, good morning. Yolanda Chavez with the CEO's office. It was, except that at that time, I believe that no one actually discussed the issue with our bond attorneys. Because what I hear now from our bond attorneys and our staff is that if it had passed Prop H, we couldn't have done many of the things that were outlined in the ballot language without going through a validation.
I see.
John Wickham with CLA. One of the things that was done in Measure H was it set out specific dollar amounts for specific programs. And one of the concerns, and what is before you now is a general program. Rather than specifying amounts for each use, it would be determined on an annual basis. And the intent there is to make sure that the council is able to use the funds that are available under the, if the voters approve this, that you can use all of the funds available. If it's limited to specific pools of uses, you can get to a point where you would have money sitting there that you would not be able to use. So the intent that I think that's in front of you is to give you the greatest flexibility to put the money into the uses on a year-by-year basis based on the efforts that you're moving forward, the program, the projects that come forward and are approved, and allow you to adjust from year to year.
But just to clarify, the GEO bond, unlike the parcel tax, where the city would collect the money and actually have a fund that they could dedicate to the different programs, with GEO bonds, the city would only issue bonds when the project is ready. So it's not a pool of money. You would have the projects that are ready to be financed, ready to break ground, and that's when the bonds would be issued to finance those projects.
Understood. Appreciate the explanation. Colleagues, we looked at fixing our streets in the city of Los Angeles. A quarter of our streets are in failed condition. We looked at a GEO bond with Save Our Streets LA, and we heard loud and clear from the residents of the mistrust that they have when we approve a measure and those dollars are not going to be spent as promised. And I'm happy to see that with this 24A motion before us that we will have a robust public oversight committee, in addition administrative oversight committee, and knowing that both the public oversight and administrative oversight committee will be meeting regularly and reporting to ensure that these dollars are spent wisely. And now, colleagues, there's no better time than now to seek government intervention and ask the voters to pitch in to address the homeless issue here. My colleagues on the boards of the NLC, the National League of Cities, and the California League of Cities are scrambling today trying to find resolution to housing the homeless, not only in the state but throughout the country. And I damn well know that permanent supportive housing does work. And I encourage you to visit Vermont Villas in my district at 16304 South Vermont. We have heavily relied on our nonprofits to build out our permanent supportive housing like PATH has done in my district. However, our friends in the development community, they do all that they can on finding and creating housing, low-income housing. But we know that in my experience as a police officer, permanent supportive housing worked. Housing first. We've talked about this several times. So I'm looking forward to moving on this, and I understand it's going to go back to committee. They're going to hash it out one more time before it comes to full council, and I appreciate all the work that's being done thus far.
Mr. Bonin?
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to address the issue of flexibility because there's two different types of flexibility we've been hearing. One is the greater flexibility that you have in the parcel tax versus the bond. And I'm still at this moment somewhat agnostic on whether we should do the bond or the parcel tax, but I have a bit of a born-again fervor about what we should be spending the money on, and that's on homelessness. I'm excited about the additional possibility of flexibility in the parcel tax because you can do the gap financing and you can do other things, and it's a better source of revenue. However, we have done polling on the bond, and it has been phenomenal and off the charts. And I think it's important that we be mindful of what the universe of possibility is and what the voters are interested in doing. The flexibility I'm not interested in is a flexibility in taking the money from homelessness into other types of housing. If we had an unlimited pool of money, I would absolutely be in favor of that. But under no scenario, whether it's the parcel tax for $80 million a year or a bond at 1.1 or 1.5, do we have an unlimited pool of money? And even at the 1.1 or the 1.5, it's not enough to help us finish resolving the crisis of homelessness in Los Angeles. And unless we are very specific and very clear in whatever the ballot measure is, bond or parcel tax, that a certain percentage of the money is going to permanent supportive housing, or that all of the money is going to homelessness, or a certain percentage to homelessness. Because of how difficult it is to cite, and how difficult it is to finance, and how difficult it is to build homeless housing, the homeless housing absolutely, it just won't get built. And we will be here again in 10 years having had all of our press conferences, having all of the self-congratulatory speeches, and having made a stated rhetorical commitment to permanent supportive housing, and we won't have it. And we will have these encampments on our streets today. And just like in the Depression, they called them Hoovervilles. If they're here 10 years from now, they'll be Councilvilles. That's what they'll be if we fail to do this. This is a unique opportunity for us to act. It's an important opportunity for us to act. It's essential for us to act, and I would strongly urge that we focus this on homelessness. It is the commitment that we have made. We took an action earlier in this council meeting to put on the ballot something else that will help with the production of affordable housing. I'm in favor of whatever else we need to do to help with the production of affordable housing. But if we include that in this, we've watered this down and we've lost our opportunity to really strike at the heart of the problem. Thank you.
Mr. Cedillo? Mr. Cedillo? Yes. Sir, are you speaking?
I'm sorry, I apologize. What were you saying?
You're on the queue to speak, sir.
It's a very good point, and I think we have one opportunity. We want to make sure that this is one opportunity where we do it right. And so I appreciate you going up to 1.5, and the fact of the matter is we may need more. And so we have to think about that. Mr. Santana, I wanted to ask you, though, about, let's be clear, clarify for us so that we understand what the restrictions are on bonds, the brick and mortar aspect to it, how it's really the county that provides the services or the nonprofits that provide the services in collaboration. And then talk to us about, I'm trying to pull us back a little bit. I appreciate the focus, but I'm trying to pull us back so that we can construct alignments with the county and with the state and the feds. And I want to do so in a way that's respectful of the limits that exist, because we have at times, most recently, tried to go beyond the limits, spend money for what it's not, and at the end of the day, we end up suffering. We've done that with the feds. There are real restrictions within the bonds, and we have to recognize them. It's not what we want; it's what it is. So, can you elaborate on that, please?
Certainly. So, again, the way the city has traditionally engaged in financing affordable housing is that we help private developers in fulfilling the gap that they have in building housing. So oftentimes the city creates a pool of funds and then asks developers to submit projects where they've identified the land, where they've identified other streams of funding, federal, state, sometimes county funds, where they identify the kind of housing that it's going to be, and they establish that there's a gap in that financing. And so the city then engages in a process to help fill in that gap. And so it leverages its investment with other resources. What's being proposed under the GO bond is a different approach, which mirrors what we're trying to do now by identifying city-owned parcels. As you know, your council, as part of the strategy on homelessness, approved pursuing a number of city-owned properties that we own. And so in that case, we already own the property. And so what we're doing is we're going to engage in a competitive process, invite a number of developers to submit their qualifications, and then we will match those developers to those parcels where they would develop. And then consider, but not necessarily require, that if there's a gap, that the city participate. But ideally, a developer will come with other sources of funding, and subsidizing the land itself will help finance that program. So under GO bond, we would be expanding that effort. So the city would be in developing a strategy to purchase property throughout the city for the purpose of partnering with nonprofit developers, engaging in a long-term lease, and having them build the housing, maintain the housing, and also identify other partners such as the county or the state to help fund the services component. So that would be, now there's one way to expand that, of course, is if we go to the court and ask, in essence, for permission to use a GO bond for more than what has traditionally been used, which is the acquisition of land and the building of infrastructure. We use GO bonds to build fire stations, police stations, and other services, and other city services, facilities. Under a parcel tax, it's generally, think about it as a general fund tax specifically for homelessness. So the limitations are based on what we place in the ballot measure itself. So if you state in the ballot measure that you want to acquire land with the parcel tax, then that's allowed. If you say that you want to be able to build the capacity of storage facility, that's allowed. If you say you want to fund services to help support the coordinated entry system, that's allowed. And so there's greater flexibility around that, including if the city opted to do gap financing in the way that we have traditionally. So it gives you that kind of flexibility. There's no question that it's within the city's authority to do so, and it's certainly an option that you have. And so that's really the two differences. Both of them allow the city to engage in developing housing for the homeless. They just the approaches that we would take would be different, and so that's really the primary differences between the two.
Mr. Weezer?
Just finally, on the issue of deciding between the parcel tax and the bond, our polling indicates that a parcel tax is a much heavier lift than a bond. There's much more support for a bond than there is for a parcel tax. And as Mr. Ryu pointed out, if we look at the obligations, the fiduciary duties of our respective local governments, the county is primarily responsible for health and human services, to provide those services that our homeless individuals need. We have a huge responsibility when it comes to housing, and although there's a great need on both ends to provide more services and more housing, and it kind of makes sense to me that we put our money where our responsibility is and then work with the county. And we are in a time where we're in an unprecedented time working with the county like any other time to provide those types of services. I opened up a new affordable housing unit over in Boyle Heights a month ago. And there was plenty of county people there, and their willingness for the city to provide the housing as we did there, and for them to come in, and they were providing several types of services, drug and rehabilitation services, mental health. And I think that's the model we want to move into, because if we have a lot of money available to us through a parcel tax, but we don't use it because we can't move in the direction of providing those services, I think we should just go where we can provide it and do our best effort. Now, on the flip side, the housing and only using the money through a bond for housing, it's going to take longer. That's a fact. The parcel tax money comes in about 6 months earlier, and at the same time we have to wait for the validation. Ideally, we would like to put the money into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and make that, or create a new one, as someone put in a motion for that, specifically for homelessness, so that people could draw upon that money, but that's where we need the validation. But we could go through a dual track, as we've discussed in Homelessness Committee, where in the meantime we are identifying property with developers. Perhaps we do long-term leases. People come to us with proposals to build permanent supportive housing, and we help put the money to purchase it, and we do long-term leases. But we don't want to get in the business of being the owners, as we have done in public housing in the past. That has not worked, and the Hill housing community is moving away from that. So there are pros and cons on both sides from getting a parcel tax versus a bond. But again, parcel tax, huge lift to get the voters to approve it, and helping us stick to our fiduciary responsibility, which is to provide more housing, not getting the business of services. That's a never-ending black hole, and the county has a responsibility to do that.
Mr. Wesson.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Members, I want to let you know, each and every one of you, where my focus is. My focus is on winning. My focus is on us delivering to 27,000 people who sleep on the streets every night, and they're depending on us. That is where my focus is. I want to drive down the streets throughout the city and see a change. In order for us to see a change, at least two things are going to have to happen. We're going to have to be able to take people off of the streets, but we have to prevent people from getting on the streets, because if we don't do that, you take off some, you get a new batch. You take off some, you get a new batch. So I love this passion. I love this council. We've done so much to move this issue forward. I want you to remember, it was a year ago, almost a year ago today, where this council stood up and said homelessness is one of the most important, if not the most important issue in the city of LA, and we're going to tackle it. We said we were going to fight it. We created a full-time committee for the first time in history, chaired by Mr. Huizar, chaired by Mr. Harris Dawson, and they did a phenomenal things, and they came up with a good plan. Then I had conversations with them, and I said, guess what? We need to do something bold. We need to do something aggressive. Let's say we're going to spend $100 million on homelessness. We did that. Nobody knew where the money was going to come from. Everybody was, well, you guys are blowing it. We came up with that $100 million and more. So now this council has to lead again. We all recognize that the best approach to handle this issue is a regional approach, which means we have a county problem and we should try to fix this regionally. At this point, it does not look like that is going to occur. So again, colleagues, again, City Council, it will be on us to lead the way. And that's who we are, that's what we do, and that's what we like. Because of our action, you see the county doing what they're doing, conversations in the state. So if nobody else is going to push this ball forward, we must. And that's what I want us to do today. I have a very unique approach, but it's a smart play. We push these two issues forward. We spend several days, it'll go to committee, and I'll give you my word, I'm going to do the best I can to tweak this, to incorporate everyone's concerns, and I'm going to try to come up with the best balanced package that I can come up with that the voters in this city will vote yes on, because again, 27,000 people who will never know our names, probably never vote for us, never know we did this, they're dependent upon us. And in this job that we have got elected to do, we have all kinds of responsibilities, members, but nothing is more important than keeping our people safe, and nothing is more important than taking care of people that cannot take care of themselves. Those are the two major functions of us. So I am asking today that we move these two measures forward. And let me lay out my thought. We move them forward. We can remove either one of them or both of them by the middle of August. But if we don't have something teed up and ready to go, if we keep fighting and can't come up with some consensus, then we miss an opportunity. And the worst thing that we can do is have an opportunity come our way and we not be prepared to take advantage of it. I will not go quietly into the night on that. That is what we are attempting to do. When we pass both of these, or when we authorize both of these measures to go on the ballot, Mr. Huizar, Mr. Harris Dawson, and myself are going to go on the road, similar to what you did, Mr. Buscaino, with Mr. Englander. We're going to the media. Any media outlet that will talk to us, that's where we're going. We're going to ask them too, what do you like? Parcel? Do you like bond? What's this? We're going to go to the chambers, to business. We're going to go to labor. We're going to go to neighborhood councils. And at the end of the day, once we get all of this information, we will bring it back to this distinguished body, and then the 15 of us will determine which measure is the best measure for us to keep on the ballot. It is not, hell, I want a $10 million bond, but that's not going to pass. I would like to have all kinds of flexibility, but we may not be able to pass that. But what I do know, simple, we got to take people off the street and keep people from going onto the street. And that's where we have to find our balance. And that debate we'll have next week. But on this day, on this moment, join the Rules Committee, if you would, in voting to move forward, to move the Rules Committee's report. And also, Mr. Bonin, we will welcome your amendment, and we will discuss it in committee. No commitments, other than the commitment will be that we will have a robust conversation. So with that said, I am urging and asking us to continue to be the leader in this state, and maybe eventually in this country, where it relates to homelessness. By us, we've already talked the talk. Now it's time for us to walk the walk. Now it's time for us to put the money where our mouth is. We have the mayors with us. This council is there. Let's get it done. Remember, 27,000 people are out there in the blistering heat right now. Never know your name, Michael. Never going to vote for you, Gilbert. Never going to vote for you, Curran. Will never come up and say thank you for what you did. But in your heart and your mind, you know. And that's what does that commercial say? That's priceless. So I urge everyone, help us, help me advance these two measures I asked for, and I vote.
Thank you, Mr. Bonin.
Yeah. Just a point of information, just wanted to thank you, Mr. Wesson, for agreeing to consider this and discuss in committee next week. If your committee does choose to incorporate some of my suggestions, we still have time to put that into the language for the ballot. That's
yes,
that is correct.
Thank you very much. Trust me.
Thank you.
We have a few days. All of this was done strategically to give us more time and flexibility. Everybody that sits around this horseshoe, you know me. You know how I think. I don't think about one move. I think about 5. And that's what I tried to do. So, yes. So, please, Madam President, I am requesting an aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Wesson. Madam Clerk, public comment has been satisfied on this item. Without objection, we'll refer item 24A to the Rules Committee. And now before us is item 24. So can you please open the roll?
And for clarification, the request is to approve the Rules, Elections, Intergovernmental Relations, and Neighborhoods Committee report.
Yes, that's correct. Now let's vote on item 24, which is before us. Let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the votes.
13 ayes.
Okay, great. The item passes. Thank you. Madam Clerk, what's before us?
Council has...
Sorry. Mr. Wesson.
I want to announce that we have some special guests with us today from President Pro Tem Kevin De Leon's office. We have some great new interns, the future of this state, and they're led by my beautiful wife, Fabian Wesson. Let's give them a round of applause. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you very much, and welcome to the LA City Council chambers. Madam Clerk, what's before us?
Council has motions for posting and referral.
Posted and referred.
That clears the desk.
Members, are there any announcements? Seeing none, can we all please rise Members of the public, can you all please rise for adjourning motions? Members of the public, can we please rise for adjourning motions? Any adjourning motions on my right? Seeing none, any adjourning motions? Mr. Wesson.
Madam President and members, I want to adjourn in the memory of the death of the Curse from Cleveland, Ohio. They had won a championship. First time since I was 12 years old. The Curse is dead.
Any other adjourning motions? Seeing none, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.